Before we head back to Michigan and pick up the closing arguments in the McCallum case, some breaking news out of South Carolina. Convicted killer Alec Murdaugh sentenced to another 40 years for stealing from his clients and his law firm. This happened in federal court just moments ago. There are no cameras there, so this is file video of him in the state court. He pled guilty last September to 22 federal charges, including conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud and money laundering. Federal prosecutors accused him of defrauding his personal injury clients and law firm out of millions of dollars in settlement funds. Those funds, of course, went to him and his personal benefits. U.S. District Judge Richard Gergel said as he sentenced Murdaugh to a harsher punishment than suggested because Murdaugh, quote, stole from the most needy, vulnerable people. Also reportedly said he was Bernie Madoff-like, methodical and devastating. Alec Murdaugh will be sentenced. He has been sentenced again to 480 months, turns into 40 years. And in the federal system, we know you have to serve 80% of that, meaning that he'll have to serve at least 32. He's 55. He'll be 87 before he sees the light of day, if he can somehow get his murder convictions overturned. Otherwise, he'll never see the light of day. Let's bring in Philip Dubé, get his reaction to this. This is from Murdaugh's standpoint, he would love to do his time in the federal system. Likely not going to happen, though. How does that all work in terms of who gets to incarcerate a guy like Murdaugh, and your reaction to the sentencing?
Well, the general rule is that a sentenced prisoner serves what's called a determinate sentence first. And if the federal court gave him determinate time, he will serve his time, and then from there, he goes on to continue what we call the indefinite or the indeterminate sentences under South Carolina law, and namely for the murders. He is banking on a reversal of the murders based on that juror misconduct type allegation, where not necessarily juror misconduct, it was clerk of the court misconduct that influenced the jury. There was one juror who said that Becky Hill's actions influenced her verdict. And if a higher court says, look, if it affected one juror, we can throw out this verdict and send it back on remand for retrial. And I think Alec Murdaugh is banking on that. But even assuming he does prevail, let's just pretend that happens. He'll be reconvicted on retrial. The evidence is what it is. Nothing is going to change. But as for the federal sentencing, I actually take exception with the federal court allowing in the results of a failed polygraph test because the federal rules of evidence say that they're not admissible. And the reason why is they are scientifically unreliable. Even though he was willing to partake in it, I think to hold it against him, when in theory the results could be inaccurate, and I'm not saying that they were, but when you don't have that type of scientific validity, I think it's unfair to tack on another 40 years. Unless there's some definitive proof that he lied, which I'm sure nobody doubts, but you cannot base your beliefs in his mendacity on his prior conduct. There has to be something to buttress it during the time of the polygraph exam. Otherwise, it may be fundamentally unfair. That's just my take on it. But his cries of addiction and apologies certainly rang hollow with the court.
Absolutely, yeah, and the judge saying it was Bernie Madoff-like because of the calculating, methodical, devastating nature of it all. Makes sense. Fascinating and buttressing. Philip Dubé with some more big words for us to digest on a Monday.